So, how much is too much when it comes to checking on your tables? Some customers are going to want you to be there all the time, wandering through, asking if they're okay, and others are going to want you to just leave them alone so that they can enjoy their meal in peace. Now, the difference between being an absent server and a, oh my gosh, why won't this server leave me alone server, is just the customer's perspective. Usually, it comes down to what their preferences are far more than how much you're actually checking in with the table. So that being said, there's some things to keep in mind that will help you determine how much check in with the table and what kinds of tables you should be checking in more with, as well as what kinds of checks there are. So, before we get going, I just want to kind of verify or clarify with you that when we talk about checking in on a table, that's usually after both the food and the drinks have been served. So that's kind of in that in-between time while they're eating, before they're ready to have the bill come out to them. Just making sure that everything's okay. Now there's a couple different kinds of checks that you can do. The first one is what most restaurants are going to require you to do, which is kind of checking back on that table within the first 2 minutes or so. This is just making sure that if they needed ranch, you can get it for them right away, or maybe if they're running low on a drink, anything like that. It's just verifying that the food that they've been served is what they wanted and that they're happy. Now, another kind of check is what I call the silent check, which is where you just quietly walk by and you just kind of peer at their table. You kind of look, they see you looking, they see you around, and it's just a way of being present but not actually interrupting the conversation, interrupting them. If they need you, you are completely available for them to ask a question or to get something for them. Another kind of check that's very similar to that is kind of a table touch. It's just a quick way of going by, and as you're talking, you might be able to just touch the tip of their table, either actually touching it or just kind of giving the illusion that you are, but it's just a way of saying, do you need anything else? Is that salmon up to your expectation? Did you need more napkins over here? But it's just a way of checking in with them and making sure that they know that you are available and that you are there for them. So those are the different kinds of touches. Now let's talk about the different kinds of customers and how different parties can mean and want different kinds of interactions and be wanting to be checked in with more often. Let's start with families. So if you've got a family and there's some young kids at the table, usually the parents are thrilled to have the waiter checking in often. Usually they're excited when you're excited about their kids. This could be playing a tic-tac-toe game with one of their kids or just asking them questions about their day. They're usually really happy to see you engaging with their family. And so you really can't over check in on that kind of table, as well as you might have some additional needs like more napkins and, just checking in to make sure that the milk didn't get spilled, things like that you just want to be more present and more aware of than another kind of table. Another kind of guest is your solo diners. Now this can go either way. Some folks who go to the restaurants by themselves are really looking to be engaged with. They're either sitting at the bar or in your section and they're looking for some conversation. So being able to engage personally with them and to find out a little bit about them is usually a great way to build a little bit of rapport and just have a good time entertaining your guest. There are other sides of that where if you go to a restaurant by yourself, sometimes you bring a book and all you want to do is sit by yourself and enjoy the book. Now I've found that if this is the guest in your section, the best thing to do is to acknowledge that and say, hey, it looks like you brought your book, so I'm going to drop off your food here. If you need me, let me know. I won't be disturbing you. It's just a way of putting them in control and letting them be able to monitor how often they're interrupted when they're just there to have a nice time by themselves and enjoying their own dining experience. Another type of customer is large parties and groups. Now, oftentimes you have to check in with them more often because having more people means you probably have more needs. But you might be able to appoint a single person that's your main go-to person, where you're able to ask them what's going on and if anybody needs something. So this could be the person who made the reservation or just kind of the spearhead of the group. They might be able to give you a better pulse on the table instead of going to every single person and asking if they needed anything. Another party that you might have at your tables is a business group. Now this might be a group of coworkers out to lunch, this may be a business presentation that somebody's putting on, but either way, you want to make sure that you're giving them great service, but typically you want to be less engaged. If it's a presentation, your business owners are going to be wanting to run the presentation and to be able to have it going their own way instead of being interrupted constantly by a server. So if this is your table and your party, you might want to take extra effort when they're ordering just to make sure that you have everything that you need to be able to put in their order and accurately bring it out to them so that you don't have to go back to the table and ask for clarification on what salad dressing they wanted or what size of a salad they wanted. So you're just better to take that extra time during the appointed process. And then you can also let the business owner know, or whoever is leading the table in the group, if they need anything to let you know. And that way, again, it puts them in charge instead of them being on the hook, waiting for you to come by. You're kind of sizing them up, and you still might do a few silent checks back and forth, a few slow walk-bys just to make sure that they're still okay and that if they do need you, they absolutely can grab you. One more kind of party that you might have at your table is couples. And again, this can go either way. Some couples come into the restaurant and they're just so excited to be out to dinner and they just want to talk to you and have that experience with the server, and others just want to stare into each other's eyes and be left alone. So you're able to kind of judge what the couple wants when you're seating them and in those first few interactions you have with them. And at that point, you just kind of let them do their thing if that's what they want, and just stay present but not necessarily interrupting. And so it's just kind of figuring out what it is that you need to do for each type of party that really is more of an art than a science, because it really differs dramatically based on the customers you have in your restaurant. It also can depend on whether you're a casual restaurant or an upscale restaurant. Depending on the kind of clientele that comes through, the customers really makes a huge difference on what their expectations are as far as service, whether they expect to be talked to often throughout the meal or whether they are going to expect you to be silent and simply serve them while they eat. So it can go either way. So you just want to make sure that you're asking and watching your fellow servers and seeing what they do and how their customers are responding to that. You'll get better and better at this the longer you're in the restaurant and the longer you serve similar types of groups. You'll see that there are similarities throughout the service. Some other things you might pay attention to is the geography, where your restaurant is located. If you're in the heart of a city center and you're never going to see these people again and they're just coming in real fast to get a meal and leave, you're probably not going to be as chatty than if you're living somewhere where culturally everyone's a lot friendlier, they're a lot more open. This is more of a family type of a feel where people return and are repeat guests all the time. And so you'll have that difference to notice, as well as the time of day that the customers have entered into the restaurant. If they're coming in the middle of a rush hour, you don't always have time to sit there and chit chat with them and to check in as often. And so you're going to have to be able to adapt your service styles based on the speed of the restaurant and based on the performance that you need to present to them. So keep in mind, there are also a couple things to avoid when you're serving your tables and you're trying to decide how often to check in on your table, or should you give them a little bit more space, those kinds of questions. So the first thing that can really impact your tip is if you're what's called the disappearing server, who goes to the table to drop the food off, but isn't seen again until they bring out the bill at the end of the meal. Now, some customers like to be left alone during the meal, but they could have had an issue, they could have needed something from you, and so they want to, at some point, see you either at their table or just in the section. So you want to make sure that you do stay present, even if you're not checking on the table as often. The other thing that can happen is the distracted server. So you might be present, but if you're standing over by the computer system, or you're talking with a coworker, or you're sitting on your phone, and you're not really there paying attention to customers, this can drive them crazy to see, especially if they need something, especially if they're sitting there saying, I really could use a drink refill and my server is right there, but I can't get their attention. So you just want to make sure that you're avoiding those. That's how often you should check in on customers. The real answer is it does depend. It depends on the group of people, and it really depends on what their service expectations are and what you can offer to them. So either way, you just have to learn as you go how to handle that. Thank you for watching this video. I want to encourage you to subscribe for more trainings and to get better at being in the restaurant. We're always looking for ways to help you improve your skill set and the way that you interact with the customers and ultimately your tips. Now, if you have specific ways that you've learned that help you to check in on your customers or that have worked for you, a rule of thumb maybe, leave us a comment below. Your comments really do help everyone grow and to become better servers. We're all doing this together. All right, friends, I'll see you next time.